Thursday morning. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin, November 9th. Beautiful sunny day. Jane Matner in for Kristen Bry. Lots of company. Greg Bach and Carol Kane with me live in studio. And it is time for our public cervix announcement with our friend, Dr. Kristin Lyerly. Good morning, Dr. Lyerly. How you doing?
I'm so good. Hello, everybody. Isn't it great to be here together, Greg, for the second time today?
Hi.
And I don't know if we should probably avert our eyes.
Oh, yes.
I don't know if we can actually look you directly in the eyes anymore if you have handlers now that because you have reached star status.
I was on John Oliver's show on Sunday, which is, it was a 7-second clip. So I guess I've made it.
That's 7 seconds more than any one of us in this room.
Absolutely. That was so cool when I went back on Monday and I watched it. It's like, that's our friend.
Do you know what she during the show? She was on Pat's show this morning, and then she just, the HBO thing is one thing, and then we were talking about, various health. We were talking mental health in the elderly. Just whips out a story. I was at the White House with the president.
But it illustrated the fact that Joe Biden is in his right mind and he does not appear to have any issues. So it counters all of those conservative talking points. I wasn't doing it. Oh, come on, Greg.
Just casually name dropping. Well, I was hanging out at the White House.
I was on the moon last Thursday. Oh.
Well, congratulations to you for making that appearance on Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. That was pretty cool.
And congratulations to all of us for the election results on Tuesday that clearly show that the will of the people stands with where Democrats are headed. And, I know we try not to be partisan. At least we try to be fair and even. But man, Ohio, everything that they did to put barriers in people's way in Ohio and to prevent them from being able to pass this constitutional amendment. And the people of Ohio were not fooled. They were out there in force, standing up for themselves. That's what we're going to do in Wisconsin in the fall.
And it wasn't just Democrats because they did exit polling in Ohio. There were, not a huge number of Republicans, but I want to say it was 17%. And something like 55% of independents voted yes on issue 1. So this is a banning abortion is not a popular opinion, but I think, Kristen, and I just saw this morning in Michigan now, because Michigan also did something similar with building this into their state constitution. In Michigan now, they're going to try and go around the will of the voters and are essentially saying the voters don't get to make up new laws.
Yeah. Well, they're going to try everything. They're going to pull out all the stops. But what we've seen consistently, and you're right, it's not a Democrat-Republican thing. A lot of those independent voters tend to vote with one party or another. But what we're seeing is this is about our personal freedoms. This is about other people telling us what we have to do with our own bodies in our own lives. And people don't like it. It doesn't matter what party you typically align with. It's not right. So we're seeing it change, and we will see it change in Wisconsin. I sincerely believe that.
Yeah, again, it's remarkable to me to see some of the comments made by some of these predominantly male white politicians, and they're stunned that at least 50% of the population is a little ticked off that they're trying to be stripped of their bodily autonomy. I know it's shocking, but yeah.
And it's way more than 50%. I can't tell you how many men approach me and say, what can I do? I just feel marginalized in many ways. I don't know, Greg, maybe you can speak to this. They're like, I'm not a woman, but this is it's so hard and I want to be part of the solution.
Well, but I would think a lot of them have women in their lives and they respect them and they want to do, I know my husband would cross across a field of broken glass if I needed help, so I think that's a lot of guys about why they ask that, what can I do? Because they have women in their lives that they love.
I think the other thing too is that, it's been discussed at for a great while, is the fact that these sorts of laws, proposed laws, they have effect on men too. They affect everybody, period. And to say, well, I'm not a woman, so I don't care. Then I was like, as Carol has said, then you don't apparently have a woman in your life that you care about, or just have basic human decency. Because if they can do this, then what's next? If they can do that, then what's next after that? You know, even
And just because they didn't do it to you
exactly
doesn't mean the next thing isn't going to be about you.
I mean, perfect example. Right now, it's happening in Michigan. They overturned. They ruled on Dobbs. Michigan said, nope, we're going to do it we're going to have access anyways. And then the government says, well, we don't think you know how to do laws. And that 10th Amendment in the Constitution, we'll get around that.
Mm-hmm. We saw that in Ohio as they were approaching this last ballot initiative. They had the other ballot initiative to change how they run ballot initiatives.
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, they're just pulling out all the stops. But I think one of the other things that's really important to acknowledge is that their messaging is so far off the rails when they say things like Democrats want abortion all the way up until the time of birth and even beyond. Like, that's just plain a lie. And it's crazy. But what people are also hearing is Republicans aren't expanding Medicaid. So postpartum women aren't getting health care. And that's when women die related to pregnancy and childbirth. So there are so many things we can do better.
And because our maternal mortality rates are going in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And I mean, that ties into one of the things that I put on our list to talk about today, which is syphilis. We talked about syphilis in the past. There's new data out on syphilis. In the last 10 years, we've had an 11-fold increase in the number of babies that have died as a result of syphilis infections. And it was almost eliminated 20 years ago. When I was going through medical school, we talked about it. We knew how to screen for it. We knew what it was. We knew how to treat it, but we never saw it. I've seen more syphilis in one day in the last couple of months than I did my entire career before that.
So, and what is the change then, Dr. Lyerly? What changed over those 20 years?
Well, really what I think it comes down to is public health. We don't have, COVID happened. A lot of people weren't getting the healthcare, the screening that they needed. And also we've had drug shortages. We've had people who do not have access to healthcare. Most of these people have either no healthcare during their pregnancy or inadequate healthcare during their pregnancy. It's really hard to screen people for diseases like this if they're not coming in to get care, and they can't come in to get care if they don't have coverage or access.
Well, and you know what? It's kind of like that. Nobody wants to talk about it because it's uncomfortable. And the thing is that knowledge is absolutely power. And you need to get this word out so that women who may be exposing themselves to unhealthy practices, if you will, can know what the consequences might be.
And they may not even know, Carol. They may think that they are in a safe relationship. They may not have any symptoms. It may not even be on their radar, but they still could end up in this situation. And I have seen that personally.
Dr. Kristin Lyerly is our guest every Thursday at 11:06 for Public Cervix Announcement, talking about Tuesday's election and the results specifically related to abortion in this country. But going back to something that you said a little bit earlier, these healthcare deserts are a problem and a growing problem, including here in Wisconsin. So women, men, anybody, you have to drive an hour and a half away, right? Or longer.
Yeah, I'm very familiar with the maternity care deserts. We've lost half of our rural hospitals in Wisconsin in the last 20 years who deliver maternity care. So women are having to drive further and further to deliver their babies. And I don't know if you're familiar with how labor goes, but sometimes it can be pretty unpredictable. I've definitely taken care of people who have delivered on the side of the road. I've talked with EMT people who have been called to cars as they're trying to get there. The classic thing is like the person pulls up into the valet area of the hospital and we run out and there's a woman looking shocked with a baby in her pants. I mean, this happens because people have to drive so far to deliver their baby. And when you're having to come in once a month for your regular prenatal care, and then it's twice a month, and then it's 4 times a month as you get closer to the end of your pregnancy, those are a lot of visits. That's a lot of time away from work. That's a lot of time that you need somebody else to watch your other kids. It's really hard to get that care if it's not local and convenient for you.
To tell you the truth, I was a terrible pregnant girl.
Shocking.
I know, right? But both my pregnancies, so to address what you're saying, both my pregnancies were problematic. I really had difficulty carrying my children. So if I'd had to drive a long way.
Can you imagine if you had a 2-hour drive just for an appointment?
No, I mean, because I was posed at least at one point in time with the amnio that came back, and the woman who read the amnio said to me, "You've got 2 days to make a decision as to whether or not you want to continue with this pregnancy, because once you hit 24 weeks, you're done. Nobody's going to touch you." And it was one of the most traumatic moments of my life, but I was at least lucky enough to be able to be someplace where my doctor was, maybe a half an hour away, maybe.
Carol, I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because this is happening more and more. And here in Wisconsin, even without this 1849 ban, we have a 20-week ban that's actually dated by post-fertilization age in the books, which is not even a real thing. But it means that people come in for their ultrasound, typically around 20 weeks. They may find out that their baby has a problem. They've got an incredibly short window to make decisions. They may be making decisions because they're feeling stressed and pressed, and they don't have the resources around them to help them make that decision and to see what the future might look like. This is one of my greatest concerns. Patients, people who are looking at the future of their family, need time. They need support. They need resources. They don't need politicians in their exam room saying, "I need you to make a decision right now."
And this is where finding the right physician for you is so incredibly, what's the word I'm looking for? Important. It's so incredibly important, because to tell you the truth, once I got that phone call, I called my OB, and he was the greatest. He goes, "No, you're not doing anything." He says, "You're just going to be," and he couldn't have been more supportive of me. So this is where you really this is an important thing. You got to take some time and find the right physician for you.
Dr. Lyerly is going to stay with us when we come back. The importance, of moving.
What? Oh,
You got this.
As we're all sitting around in our chairs, stay with us. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Matt-Mayer in for Kristen, Bry, Greg, and Carol in studio with me. Calvin is on the board, and we are joined every Thursday at 11:06 for Public Cervix Announcement. If you ever have a question for Dr. Lyerly, you can certainly text it in or call at 844-967-2789. Before we talk about exercising, I want to go back. I want to go back to something you mentioned in the previous segment about the GOP presidential candidate debate on Wednesday night. And this has happened many times. And every time I see this on television, I am screaming at the television saying, that is not a thing. And I'm referring to abortion up to the moment of birth and after. That is not a thing, Dr. Lyerly, right?
Abortion up until the moment of birth and sometimes after only exists on conservative talk radio and television. It does not happen in the real world.
I mean, if you are going, if it is necessary to have a procedure to save the life of the mother, I always thought it was called palliative care. If you are in your ninth month of pregnancy, it is. I just don't see a woman coming in at that point and saying, "Yeah, I changed my mind." No, it's because something drastically has gone wrong.
100%. The vast majority of abortion care happens very early in pregnancy. And the further you get along in the pregnancy, the more likely this is actually a wanted pregnancy. And you're bumping into problems, whether they're maternal problems, like women can have problems with their blood pressures even before they hit that point of viability where a baby can survive outside of its mother. Women can have lots of other issues. I mean, there are women who they go into pregnancy knowing that their lives are at risk, but it means so much to them. But they do it knowing that they're being monitored very closely. And if they have a status change, that they've got options. And that's a rare circumstance. I mean, obviously, there are many different scenarios here. But once you get to that point of viability, if there is a delivery, a palliative delivery or a procedure, it's because there is something very wrong. And these are heartbreaking situations. I mean, I can tell you about a family that I delivered at 32 weeks because their baby had a genetic kidney problem, and it was a non-functioning kidney. The baby had no fluid around it, would not have survived. And so we did everything that we could. We surrounded them with support, faith leaders, family members, so that they could make the decision about what the best thing was for them right then and into the future. And we delivered her at 32 weeks, knowing that their baby was going to die. And they held their baby as he died. And we all got to go into the room and meet him. They were so proud and so happy. And, we shared our blessings. And I mean, can you even imagine being in a situation like that? And then to hear and to have this in your history and to hear these people on TV just repeating this like a slogan, how painful is that to real people who have experienced these traumatizing situations? Shame on those conservative talk radio hosts and TV hosts for doing this.
And yes, those moderators should all have to be, I want to sit them down and we're going to have a chat, because they should be calling them out on this. Letting them spew this BS, I'm sorry, is infuriating.
Mm-hmm.
Abortion up to the moment of birth and after is not a thing. It's just not. Okay.
All right.
Now we can talk about exercise.
Yes, let's talk about.
we don't have to. We can talk about other things if we want.
Let's talk about how we need to get off our butts and actually move, and it really is very important.
It is, because too much sitting increases your risk of death by 38%, or at least a
Thanks,
recent
Bummer.
study.
Good Lord.
A recent study out of the US and Scandinavia of about 12,000 people, where they looked at these people carried trackers around, like either Apple Watch kind of things that tracked your movement or something similar. And so they knew how much they were getting up and moving. And then they looked at death records. And what they realized was people who spent more than 12 hours a day sitting have a 38% increased risk of death, unless they get at least 22 minutes of exercise every day.
22.
That's very specific, Doc.
Well, yeah, because these are data people, so they're looking at all the different points and they're trying to figure out like what makes the most sense. So to me, if I was talking to my patient about this, I would say, just try to get 30 minutes a day. Pick something that you love. You don't have to like go to the gym and be super hardcore. Like, go for a walk after dinner, hop on your bike. If you've got a treadmill in your garage in the winter, pop on a TV show and just, move your body a little bit. It does make a difference, and it doesn't have to be grueling.
It is not a tough formula. Eat less, move around more, and you're gonna be healthy. That's all there is to it.
I don't like any of this. I like sitting and eating.
But what this makes me happy in that it's not, you all need to work out for an hour and a half a day, and you should be doing this and this, and it, with everything else in people's busy lives, that is just too much to take on. It is. But if we can break it down into, go for a 25-minute walk, go for a 30-minute walk once a day, 4 times a week.
It doesn't even have to be like all in one block. Like, you could get up during your lunch hour and just walk around for 10 minutes and sit back down again. Greg.
What is with, like, seriously, you just, like, last show we were doing this every time. Every time. Makes me feel so syphilis, Greg. What's that about?
I love you, Greg.
I love you more. Whatever. Ugh.
I'm just wondering, because I got a Pat mentioned this about, runs to the bathroom in the middle of the night. I was up at least 4 times last night. Can I add those all up into like a 3-minute walk?
That's it. Next week, we're talking about bladder health, because it is Bladder Health Month. That was a cry for help from Jane. Did you all hear it?
But as I get older, I get up in the middle of the night. I do go to the bathroom, but I feel like if my body is waking me up to go to the bathroom, and I go to the bathroom, I make it and I do my thing and I come back and go back to bed, I feel like that says a lot about my body versus waking up the next morning being like, well, I wet him. I feel like there's.
But it
I feel
doesn't
like my
count
body's
towards your
healthy because
exercise.
it's properly getting myself to the bathroom to use it and then go back to bed. I don't know.
And maybe we'll talk about prostate health too next week.
And we'll
There you go.
Can we also talk about sleep? We gotta talk about sleep.
This
Oh
is
my
where getting
gosh.
this is where getting a dog could be very helpful, because you got to get them out and you got to get them exercise, and they love the company, as do you. You know, just that's what I used to do with my dogs. I'd walk them all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand the other side of the coin with the responsibility that a pet does carry, but yet at the same time, if I never got Beauregard and Sydney out, I'd be way fatter than I am right now.
Let's double down on the goodness of a pet too, because that feeds your heart as long as it's like a good relationship with your pet.
Yeah.
I mean, that can also be really good for your mental health. So really the key is finding the thing you love to do and doing it. Maybe it's going for a walk with your friend in the morning. Maybe it's you have a pet. Maybe it's you have a TV show that you watch every day. Whatever it is, just do it every single day. And pretty soon you'll find that you miss it when you don't do it.
Dr. Kristin Lyerly is our guest every Thursday at 11:06 for Public Cervix Announcement. You can always text in your questions at 844-967-2789. Thank you so much,
Thank
Dr.
you.
Lyerly. We will see you next week.
See you, Doc.
Let us know
For
if you're on-
bladder health.
for bladder health. Let us know if you're going to be on any nationally syndicated programs. All right, stay with us. When we come back, we're talking all things sports. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. Jane Mattner in for Kristen Bry, joined by Calvin on the board, Greg and Carol with me in studio, and a special guest of Greg Bucks.
Yes, a good friend of mine, comedian extraordinaire and sports radio guy here in Milwaukee. Ramie Makhlouf, welcome to the show.
How are we? Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it was great to have you. Well, for those who don't know Ramie is a stand-up comedian. He's a good friend of mine. We worked on shows all over the area. But he's also a sports fanatic. We don't share the same taste in teams.
We do
But-
run some teams. I'm a Bucks fan. I've grown to love the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay, all right. Well, you're getting
I'm
there.
wearing my hat
Well,
right now. Look at
I was surprised you didn't rock a Cubs hat, honestly.
that. I thought
mean-
about it. I thought about it, Greg. I didn't want to poke the bear too much in my first appearance.
But also, you know, like you've been on sports talk radio, and you've got a lot of great opinions on the topic of Wisconsin sports, and I wanted to bring you on because
Some would disagree with you that I have great opinions. A
Those
few
people are wrong.
might disagree with you. Okay,
they're wrong.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, let's actually, I wanted to talk about, just kind of go through the gamut of the teams, but I really want to talk about what happened last night at the Bucks game, which is Giannis getting ejected for what seems like the most infantile. It was dumb. It was dumb.
He didn't do anything.
Yeah.
That was the craziest part. Like, he didn't do anything that I haven't seen in an NBA game before. You know what I mean? And the NBA this year has been trying to crack down on these minutes restrictions and load management that these teams do with their superstars, where they'll just sit them on random nights because they want the battery to be charged up when the playoffs come. And for the NBA to crack the whip or bring down the hammer when it comes to that, and then take one of the top 3 players, if not the best player in this league, in front of his home crowd and eject him early in the game for something as small as that is just crazy and hypocritical. And I'm not a guy who sits here and is like, refs need to be punished. They got a tough job, and we all mess up at our jobs from time to time. You know what I mean? But when just sheer ego or incompetence leads to something like that, and Milwaukee Bucks fans sitting there not seeing Giannis for 2+ quarters because the referee made a terrible decision, is inexcusable. And that ref, there should be some kind of punishment for that ref if they're serious about NBA fans getting the most for their money and seeing the superstars that they paid to show up and see, when he didn't do anything to deserve an ejection right there.
Well, and Ramie, from what I understand, because I didn't see the game myself, but it was basically over a face. He made a face, right?
Yeah. He dunked hard and he mean mugged, which we've seen Giannis do many a times. And his mean mug happened to be pointed in the direction of the guy whose face he just dunked on moments before. And he didn't even hold it. He didn't even hold the mean mug on the guy. He looked at him for less than a second, turned around and mean mugged his way down the court, as we've seen him do many a time, and never get a technical foul for it.
Here's what I don't understand is that the bravado is there for sure. How, you kind of want to see that. Now, I don't want to see him get ejected, but at the same time, it's like, don't take any guff. It's fine. That's part of the deal.
Yeah, I say this all the time. I have no problem with emotion and celebration being a part of sports. Like they're literally games that these people play for our entertainment. Dunk and do you know how much I would celebrate if I could dunk a basketball one time? not even as hard as Giannis does, and not even in an NBA game. If I could just go to the park and dunk one time, I would be obnoxious. You'd have to give me a technical foul for the way that I would celebrate. I say celebrate your dunks, toss your bats when you hit home runs, do a dance when you score a touchdown. Entertain me. If that's what you feel like you need to do, then do it to entertain me.
Well, speaking of touchdowns, let's move on. But I was going to say, we'll go to a park. I'll bring a ladder. You bring the basketball. You can dunk all day, buddy. So I feel like you are. So full disclosure to everyone listening, Ramie is a huge Cubs and Bears fan.
Yeah,
and one thing that the Packers fans could always rely on is our ability to, no matter how bleak it feels like for us, we're not the Bears. But I feel like this is a year where Bears fans and Packer fans can get together and be like, "Ooh, this is rough. This is a rough one."
Yeah, but I wouldn't expect it to last, Greg. Packers fans aren't used to this. And in all my years on sports talk radio in Milwaukee, I would always tell Packers fans, and I didn't mean this in the insulting way that it comes off, or that most people would associate with this word, but y'all were spoiled for a long time with a run of Hall of Fame quarterback play. Yes. and contending teams. You know what I mean? And when you're used to that, when you're used to a certain lifestyle, it's hard to digest and process what is going on right now. I wouldn't jump off the train, whether you're talking about Jordan Love as a potential franchise quarterback somewhere down the line, the Packers being back in contention before very long, because it's a well-run, I would even say top-notch organization as far as NFL teams go. And that's not easy for me to say as a Bears fan, but I don't deny reality, whether we're talking sports or politics or anything else. When the truth is ugly, I look at it and I go, damn, that's ugly, but that's the truth. And the Bears are not. The Bears aren't going to turn this thing around anytime soon. They've broken Justin Fields like they broke Mitch Trubisky, like they broke Jay Cutler, like they've been breaking quarterbacks my whole life. The Packers actually know what they're doing with a quarterback and with an organization. And I think that they'll get the most out of Jordan Love. And if that's not enough, they'll go get another guy and they'll get the most out of him. The Packers know what they're doing. And look, they're not going to contend for a Super Bowl this season, but I wouldn't be surprised if they were in the mix for a playoff spot before all was said and done, and give you some meaningful, entertaining football to watch in November and December. And moving forward into the future, they'll get it right, and they'll be back atop the NFC North before long, as much as I hate to say
that. we're talking to Ramie Makhlouf here. We're talking all things Wisconsin sports. And yeah, that's the one thing, like, I not as a huge football fan, I do agree with you that Packers fans were incredibly spoiled. And the one thing that is very much frustrating, especially as a Brewers fan, is how so many of them, like within the first 2 weeks, like last year, they're just, yeah, we're going to do this. And then as soon as it's over, they're like, all right, next season. And as soon as they start sucking, they're like, well, it's a rebuilding year. I don't even watch it anyways. I don't really care. Jordan Love, we'll see what happens. Like, they're so quick to be like, toss it aside.
Yeah. And it's weird because it's like it wasn't too long ago that you were here, that you were watching Aaron Rodgers as a first-year starter after you showed Brett Favre the door to make way for him. You know what I mean? And it wasn't pretty. A lot of it wasn't pretty. Aaron Rodgers' first year as a starter. I don't care how good you are. And look, Jordan Love comes with questions. He wasn't a guy that had no holes or flaws in his game when he came out of college. People are wondering about the draft pick back then. So I'm not saying he's a surefire guy that they've hit on and he's your next franchise quarterback, but he wouldn't be the first guy to go through some struggles and some growing pains. And honestly, I see a lot of things from him that you don't see in a lot of first-year starters. When you talk about the accuracy, when you talk about the decision-making, but there are going to be growing pains for a guy starting in the NFL for the first time. And on top of that, a lot of young guys around him. When you look at that offense, they're going to have to find the right mix of players, and they're going to have to find what works for Jordan Love and go from there and get better from there. And I have a lot of faith in the brass up top and in Matt LaFleur and his staff that they'll get that right.
Well, and Ramie, you're absolutely right. We have such short memories. We have such short memories about even the first season with Brett Favre and how he would come out and it was like the pitcher in Bull Durham. You never know. You never knew where the ball was going to go. It's like it could hit the mascot.
But the problem is with Brett Favre, that wasn't just a first-year problem. That was a problem every year.
Sure. But my bigger point is, again, we forget those early seasons with a new quarterback and just think that they were always, everything was hitting on the money all the time. And that's just not what happened. It's just not. We're going to move on to the Craig Counsell leaving. Carol is still processing this news.
I'm really upset. I cannot believe it. I don't care that you're a Cubs fan because I'm not. And I cannot believe that Craig Counsell is going to Chicago. It's just unfathomable to me.
I couldn't believe it either. I couldn't believe it either. When I saw the news, I had just gotten out of the shower and I picked up my phone and I just had a screen full of notifications of people saying Craig Counsell to the Cubs. And I couldn't process it at first. I was like, as the manager, they have a manager. They didn't fire David Ross. Was he going to come and play shortstop? What do you mean Craig Counsell to the Cubs? I didn't think the Cubs were in the market for a manager, but the truth on all three sides of this thing, what is this? And I'll address the Brewers part of it first, which is people hated it when I said this about Aaron Rodgers leaving the Packers, Devontae Adams leaving the Packers. The Brewers had their chance. Craig Counsell was in the building.
Oh,
and
sure.
They could have made Craig Counsell very happy with what he was paid, with the resources that he was given to win with. And they didn't. They let him hit the free agent market. So that's one side of it. From the Cubs side of it, like I said, I didn't think they were looking for a manager. But if you ask me, and I've seen a lot more of Craig Counsell than I have most managers around baseball, but I don't think tactically there's a better manager in the game. And then you look at the other side of managing, which is, having the right mood, the right tone, the right vibe in a clubhouse, which he also seems to have mastered that. And when it comes to Craig Counsell, I know it hurts, man. I know it hurts. This is the Wisconsin kid, the Whitefish Bay kid. He grew up in the Brewers organization with his dad being part of the front office, played there, came back to manage. And that's a tough pill to swallow. But at the end of the day, this is a job for this guy. This is a job. And he didn't have to move that far to make 40% more money and to have a lot more resources at his disposal to be successful at that job. I am on As Goes Wisconsin today. If any one of you got offered 40% more and probably 2, 3, 4, 5 times the resources to be good at your job than you are getting now, I would be on As Goes Illinois. I wouldn't be on As Goes Wisconsin. you know what I mean? So I don't think you can fault Craig Counsell for taking the gig, man.
No, absolutely not. In fact, I saw a poll, J.R. Radcliffe, who's a regular contributor here on the show, asked, if the Brewers win a World Series in the next 2 years, are you still going to be mad at Craig? And I responded, I said, I wasn't mad at all. I stopped being mad at him like 12 hours after the fact because I realized this isn't a Craig Counsell problem. This is a front office Mark Antanasio problem. They have every ability to pay this man, and they didn't. They let it go to waste, and they lost him. And where we go next, I'm sorry, it's not on the players and it's not on the coach. It's on the front office's shoulders now because they didn't properly prepare.
Ramie,
and from some of the things, real quick, just from some of the things I've heard today, and I think J.R. Radcliffe was one of the people who's reported to this end. It sounds now like with the departure of Craig Counsell, the Brewers might be ready for a rebuild when it comes to the players on the field. And I just don't, man, you're asking for money for a public stadium. You just let the hometown hero walk away to the rival to be a manager. I don't know how ready Brewers fans are going to be to swallow the pill of a rebuild and a team not trying to contend starting next year. I would be concerned about attendance at AmFam Field if I'm the marketing and PR team for the Brewers out there.
Well, we just hope, Ramie, that you can talk to all the other Cubs fans about their behavior when they come to AmFam Field for the first game of the season next year, because I'm sure they're going to be gracious and really cool about it.
Oh,
And
yeah,
it'll
for
be
sure.
sweet.
Yeah,
It'll be
no
sweet.
doubt.
Thank you so
No
much
doubt
for
about that.
joining us. We will be right back. You're listening to As Goes Wisconsin. You're listening on the Civic Media Radio Network. Good morning. Welcome to As Goes Wisconsin. Thank you for joining us on the Civic Media Radio Network. 10 minutes before high noon, we have the noon news coming up, followed by the wonderful Todd Alba show from noon to 2 o'clock. So stay tuned for that. Calvin is on the board. Greg Bach and Carol Kane in studio with me, and we love to hear from you as well. 844-967-2789, 844-96-PARTY. Ramie was really fun.
Oh, he's great.
That was fun.
And he's a fantastic comedian
Well,
too.
and you know what? It's all in good fun. You know, he doesn't care that I don't care for the Cubs. He doesn't care at all. And that, you know, you got to root for your team. That's all there is to it. If you like them, fine. If you don't, fine.
Little friendly rivalry. There's
Of
nothing wrong with
course.
that, right?
Of course.
All right. Calvin had the great setup music, and we're going to switch gears just a little bit. On the one hand, the SAG strike is over, which is good.
Right.
But we were talking about Picasso off the air.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
right. Yes.
This Picasso painting.
130 is anything worth $139 million? I don't understand. First of all, I'm not an art aficionado by any stretch of the imagination, but this is one of the ugliest damn things I've ever seen. For $139, can somebody explain to me why Picasso is so respected I don't get it.
I am not an art historian either, and I just from what I understand, and if anyone knows more about art, we would love for you to chime in on this at 844-967-2789. He brought a different style, right? It was the abstraction. It was abstract.
You saw his evolution too, and he was also one of the great artists in our real time. Like Picasso was alive.
Yeah.
Like generally, I don't know this in the 20th century,
right?
And you saw his progression from one period to another period to another period, and he was an outgoing fella, and he was filmable and all those things, and I think he added to his lore. I think if Picasso lived 200 years ago, I don't know if he'd be as popular.
I just don't think I'm smart enough to figure it out.
But
like, I don't get Jackson Pollock either. You know, that looks like somebody, you know, just threw up on a canvas, or you just start, you know, and it's like, well, watch this arc of this color and that color. Okay, I could go and throw stuff on a canvas.
But they did it first. That's the thing. Like someone like Jackson Pollock, I have to believe, took the idea of just painting waterfalls and painting cubes. He said, I don't want to do any of this anymore. I want to do this. And for some reason, but this goes, and people bought it. They understood it. And like, I agree with you, Carol. I look at art and I have to try really hard to be like, I understand why people might like this. But at the end of the day, the art world is also kind of a scam. Like art is done by artists. It's taken to like studios or places to be
galleries.
Galleries. And someone who with influence can say, oh yes, I like Jane is an amazing painter. And because you trust me, Carol, as a gallery owner, you're going to say, well, Jane must be an amazing painter.
You need to have the first Janesy.
The first Janesy is $20,000. And you're like, well, I'll give you 50. And then from there, in 20 years,
the value
it might be 250,000. I mean, the art world is a scam, and it's an amazing scam because it's just so hoity-toity.
Well, and it's who gets to decide this value is assigned to this thing.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's almost arbitrary, really, when it comes down to it. There is talent, but there are people out. I mean, dare you say there are people out there in the world right now that we will never hear of who are more talented than all the greats.
I've seen some things that show up on my Twitter feed that have blown my mind. I mean, people decorating little teeny miniature boxes with
Mhm.
Right.
entire landscapes and things like that. So I would agree with you, Carol. That Picasso, that style it doesn't speak to me. It
No,
doesn't touch me. It
no.
doesn't, even at the art museum in downtown Milwaukee, and I went not too long ago, and there's the more modern art wing. And isn't it, there's just one big red dot
Yeah.
on a big
Oh, I've
white
seen that.
canvas.
I've seen that. Yeah. Or where you just have a line that goes down the middle and the bottom is one color and the top is another color.
Yep.
It's like, what, huh?
You can't make me understand why that's important. Like, at the end of the day, I'll be like, I guess it's important because you said so, and I'm not invested in that world enough. But yeah, when I see it, I'm like, I have more interest in the janitor statue that scares me every time I go. You know what I'm talking
Oh,
about?
yeah.
There's the
Oh, the
statue of the
man.
janitor.
Oh, yeah,
and you turn the corner, and there he is, like
Yes.
you've never seen him before. Scared the poop out of you.
But that, you know what? Isn't that fun? It's funny that though that resonates, right?
Yeah.
That resonates more than the red dot on the
Sure.
on the white board.
Right. I mean, I'm much more traditional, honestly. We were talking off the air before we even get started. Andrew Wyeth to me, I get it. I see she's sitting in a field with waving grass. I got it. My favorite Andrew Wyeth is the dog on the bed because I can relate to that.
Right.
It's like, okay, I get that. Norman Rockwell, I've got my Day at the Vet that I bought years and years ago. And it's this little boy holding his little puppy. I get that. That's not, I get that.
But that's the thing is, then you get art. Just because you don't get
That
that
art?
art, the art that you have at home, you get that.
Absolutely.
It connects with you. Not all art is meant to connect with everybody, but all art needs to be understood as far as its importance as set forth by other people, I guess. But you have your art at home. We have our art at home. That is hard to say. We have our art at home, and what we choose to put on our walls is what speaks to us,
Right.
and what we want, and the message we want to speak to other people. Even if it's I think that means that in your way, my way, Jane's way, you understand art.
We have a great text from the 224. Scott in Chicago says, when you go to an art gallery, you are simply a tourist looking through the trophy cabinet of a few millionaires. A
That's-
quote from Banksy.
Oh,
Not wrong.
no.
No, not wrong at all.
And you all saw what he did a couple years ago with one of his paintings.
Is that the one he shredded?
Yeah, it was amazing. But people said that's part. But see, the thing is, that's the funny thing is, once it's shredded at the auction,
Right.
that's what he did. He built a frame with a shredder in there, and once they
Sold it.
clacked it down, they said, "All right, sold for I think it was like 5 point something." Someone hit a button and it started shredding the actual painting inside the frame, and then stopped halfway through, and people went crazy and wild. But they said that increased the value of the whole thing.
That's going to wrap it up for us. Stay close for the noon news, followed by the Todd Albaugh Show. I hope you will join us again tomorrow morning, starting at 10 o'clock. This is As Goes Wisconsin. You are listening to the Civic Media Radio Network.